Jose Saramago's life. Born in 1922, he shook the literary world with Blindness in 1995.
Joining the Communist Party in '69, Saramago's activism fueled his writing. Then, in 1998, he received the Nobel Prize for Literature.
His legacy? A great storyteller, a voice for justice, and a beacon of inspiration.
Hello and welcome to Crash Course Literature. I'm Ava Phillips, and today we're diving into the haunting world of Blindness by Jose Saramago. First published in 1995, Blindness is a haunting story of an inexplicable epidemic of blindness. But before we dive into the plot, let's talk about the author.
Jose Saramago was a Portuguese writer and Nobel Prize laureate, known for his distinctive writing style and themes of communism. In Blindness, Saramago employs his signature narrative technique, including long, winding sentences and minimal punctuation, to immerse readers in a world of blindness, in which it is nearly impossible for both the characters and readers to know who is talking.
Now, let's break down the plot of Blindness.
It all begins with a sudden onset of blindness experienced by the first victim, setting off a chain reaction of events. As the epidemic spreads rapidly, more and more people become affected by the mysterious white blindness.
To contain the outbreak, authorities quarantine the blind in an abandoned mental hospital. But as the facility becomes overcrowded and resources dwindle, tensions rise among the quarantined individuals.
Social order breaks down within the quarantine facility, with some individuals resorting to theft and exploitation to survive. The situation takes a darker turn as violence erupts within the blind community, leading to a horrific assault and abuse.
But amidst the chaos, there are moments of courage and resilience. The doctor's wife emerges as a beacon of hope, taking action against the leader of a violent gang and leading a small group of survivors on a perilous journey out of the quarantine facility and into the devastated city.
Now we're going to transition into a part of the show where we start getting a little more analytical of the text itself. In his writing, Saramago alluded to a lot of different themes with regard to the dystopian world his characters were living in.
We've tried our best to compile it all into a few bullet points for you to remember these three main themes: the definition of blindness, good and evil, and the role of the government.
Throughout Blindness, Saramago continuously challenges the reader to question the definition of blindness. He portrays the white blindness not just as a physical disability, but also as a metaphor for society, turning a blind eye to moral values. Saramago promotes the reader to consider the implications of being a blind society and the effect on its fragile social structure.
Rather than a traditional story of good and evil, Saramago wants the reader to question whether there is such a thing as true goodness versus pure evil. His narrative involves characters who seem to fall in the moral gray area, such as the doctor's wife, who is a hero to the blind people and therefore good, but also commits murder in the name of saving others. Saramago wants you to question whether that makes her good or evil, or if there even is such a thing.
In Blindness, it is the government that imprisons the blind people in the abandoned mental hospital, and it is also the government that uses the armed guards to force the blind into submission.
Now, one of the most interesting parallels we can draw is between Blindness and Kazuo Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go. Both authors present dystopian worlds that serve as social commentary for larger issues. In Ishiguro's novel, we see a society that devalues the very human lives of clones for the sole purpose of organ harvesting, while in Blindness, Saramago talks about the breakdown of societal order when faced with a crisis. Interestingly, both Ishiguro and Saramago experience significant events in their lives that influence their perspectives, and these experiences are reflected in their works. Ishiguro was born in a Japan reeling from the effects of the nuclear bomb dropped at the end of World War II, and as we know, Saramago was a prominent communist in Portugal.
Moving on to Shakespeare's King Lear, throughout both works, there is a motif of sight and blindness. In King Lear, Gloucester suffers from literal blindness after having his eyes gorged out, while Lear himself is metaphorically blind to the truth. He fails to see the genuine love of his daughter Cordelia and falls victim to the flattery of his other daughters, Goneril and Regan.
It's fascinating to see the connection between Blindness and King Lear, where characters grapple with both physical and moral blindness, The inability to see becomes a symbol for the character's inability to perceive the truth about themselves and the world around them.
First paper 2 question we're going to look at today is examine the portrayal of difference, for example, physical limitations, mental illness, race, class, or sexual identity, in 2 of the literary works you've studied. So let's start by examining how physical limitations caused the breakdown of society, and the 2 texts we'll look at is Blindness and The Handmaid's Tale. In Blindness, we witness the emergence of a new social hierarchy. So these formerly healthy individuals, including the doctor's wife, now find themselves in a society where physical differences don't seem to matter anymore, and everyone is equal because they're all unable to see. This lack of sight strips away these superficial labels that society places on us, leading to a temporary state of equality.
On the other hand, The Handmaid's Tale presents a society struggling with a different kind of physical limitation. Sterility caused by chemical warfare pollution. In this dystopian world, the fertile women, like Offred, are reduced to just bodies for reproduction, their identities and freedoms stripped. Here, physical difference becomes a tool of oppression, reinforcing the societal hierarchy rather than erasing it.
The second paper 2 question we'll look at is, often the appeal for the reader of a literary work is the atmosphere a writer creates, for example, peaceful, menacing, or ironic. Discuss some of the ways atmosphere are conveyed and to what effect in 2 works you have studied. Let's talk about the creation of a tense atmosphere in Blindness and the unbearable lightness of being. In Blindness, the depressing and dire setting reflects the characters' internal struggles. There's a sense of hopelessness among the characters, emphasized by their equal lack of ability to function in everyday life by themselves.
Meanwhile, Milan Kundera's The Unbearable Lightness of Being takes place in Czechoslovakia during the communist regime. Here, the atmosphere is full of tension and ambiguity as the characters navigate life, love, and social politics. The concepts of lightness and weight carried throughout the book, reflecting the characters' own personal dilemmas and the weight of the historical events that shape their lives.
In both Blindness and The Unbearable Lightness of Being, the atmosphere serves as a powerful lens through which we view characters' experiences and the worlds they inhabit. Whether it's the suffocating despair in Saramago's mental hospital for the blind or the tension in the communist-era Czechoslovakia, these atmospheres impact how the readers perceive the deeper meaning of the novels.
Now we're going to discuss the various literary choices made by Saramago through this text by analyzing a couple passages. In this passage, the doctor, the doctor's wife, and the dog of tears venture out to gather more food for themselves and the group of survivors. Along the way, they pass a church and decide to go in. They are dumbfounded when they discover all the eyes in every painting, sculpture, and image in the church have been covered, implying that they are all blind too, along with society. In this passage and in the text as a whole, Saramago's unconventional use of punctuation can clearly be seen. Long, winding sentences are a focal point of his writing, created using minimal full stops and a frequent use of commas, creating comma splices. The second authorial choice, eyes, which can be both a symbol and motif, are prominent in the text and in this passage in particular. The eyes in the church being covered represents how people in society believe how God has turned a blind eye on them in their time of need and has let the blindness epidemic spread. The imagery in this passage is also quite compelling. The eyes are covered in white paint and white bandages, almost mimicking the fact that the blindness itself is white. The imagery in this scene becomes so gripping through Saramago's repetition of eyes covered, really driving home the fact that nobody in society was exempt from blindness and the true hopelessness of the epidemic. The imagery shows the true fear of blindness within society.
This second passage is from the beginning of the novel, when new, recently blind individuals are entering the mental hospital and identifying themselves. What's highlighted in this passage is Saramago's unique characterization, or rather lack of characterization. When these new blind people are introduced themselves, they state their occupations instead of their names. The line, "He didn't give his name, he too knows that names are of no importance here," reveals this intention strategically done by Saramago. Saramago's unique narration style and inclusion of punctuation, which we previously commented on, is also present in this passage. It is important to note that there are no quotation marks surrounding lines of dialogue in Blindness. This can be seen in the lines, "The third man said, number 3, I am a pharmacist assistant." Then a woman spoke up, number 4, I'm a hotel maid. And the last one of all, number 5, I work in an office. This lack of clearly stated dialogue adds to the concept of blindness, as the reader is not necessarily aware of who is talking, similarly to how the blind people in Blindness are unaware of who is talking because they are blind. Another important aspect to note is how the lack of characterization and clearly stated dialogue unifies the characters within the novel and places them on an equal playing field. And this aspect of equality can be related back to Saramago's communist ideals. One last impactful authorial choice we want to mention is symbolism seen in the gun and the scissors. A member of the gang or the thieves is who wields the gun, while the doctor's wife wields the scissors. The gun and the scissors are both literally used as objects that take the life of others, but they have a deeper significance associated with them. The gun symbolizes humanity's capacity for violence, as it is used to instill fear in others. The scissors, on the other hand, symbolizes rebellion, as a pair of scissors was used to liberate from violence instead of instilling fear. We can observe an interesting power dynamic between the gun and the scissors as symbols. A gun is thought of as a much stronger and more violent weapon when compared to scissors. However, it is the scissors that take out the wielder of the gun, therefore challenging this power dynamic.
We ate that.
Ate that.